I went to Mexico on New Year's and went and met up with some shamans in Mexico and did some plant medicines and ceremony. And one of those was bufo, which is the toad venom, which is DMT. But here's the thing, most of the times when you hear people talk about it, they talk about experiencing blissful oneness that you can possibly imagine. When Justin does it, and it blasts me off to this hellscape. I'm in an absolute hellscape. I'm not kidding. I hit this, I lay back, and my consciousness, it feels like it starts collapsing on itself. And then I get like stuck. And again, my body's not there. It's not even like my body exists, right? I'm not even adjusted. I'm just an experience. And it put me in this place that was just agony. I can tell you that I am 35. I've been kidnapped and pistol whipped and molested, and I watched my dad die. And this experience with DMT that lasted less than 10 minutes was the most traumatic thing I've ever, ever, ever experienced.
What happens when you go so deep into DMT that you end up in actual hell? That's what exactly happened to my boy Justin, who's the podcast host of If This Doesn't Work. And he shares his wild experience of being sent into the underworld and what he learned from it. This isn't just another trip report, it's a conversation about facing the darkest depths of consciousness and leaning into it and what it means for us to face our shadows. Just a quick heads up, there are a few glitchy sections in this recording between voice and facial expression, so I apologize in advance for the technical difficulties, but trust me, this is a banger of a conversation and it is worth listening to the entire episode. And if you're ready to take conversations like this into real life, join me at the Awaken Leader Summit on September 17th at our house in Baltimore. It's going to be a powerful day of heart-centered leadership, community, and awakening. Link is in the description. Grab your spot now. So without further ado, guys, here is my boy, J.A., Justin Anderson. Justin, my man. This is pretty cool how this came together. I think this is going to be not your normal conversation, but I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to join me on this platform.
Yeah, for sure, man. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and have the chat.
So your story, man, I think we should start there. Like, I think your journey is just so fascinating because it is the hero's journey for sure. And people listening now and watching don't know you. They don't know what you've come up through. So I think it'd be in our best interest, in their best interest, to like really find out who you are. Who is Justin?
Yeah, for sure. Um, yeah. So, uh, I guess I'd have to just start when I was young. I was someone who experienced like a childhood trauma, which a lot of people do. And the thing about trauma is sometimes people will compare out if somebody else's trauma is worse than theirs, but trauma is relative. It's like it's not what happened to you, it's how your system responded to what happened to you. So it's like trauma's been a big part of my story, and I can say fortunately, and unfortunately, it's like um, a lot of those cracks are where the lights shine through, if you do the work. And it's like I was molested as a kid by somebody I trusted, and um, I didn't tell anybody about that. And so that happened when I was probably like between 6 and 8, somewhere around there. Um, and I didn't tell anybody about that. And then I had compartmentalized that, like not even intentionally, right? Our brains have a way of protecting us. So I had compartmentalized that to the point where when I'm 13, 14, 15, I start experimenting with drugs. Everyone has experimental phases. The way I took to them um, was like, a moth to a flame. And I didn't realize, I just thought that I enjoyed it at the time. And I come from like a good family, people who care about me, people who love me. Like I didn't have like a rough upbringing, other than that trauma, but I was surrounded by people who loved me. And supported me and cared for me. And but I took to the substances like a moth to a flame, and one thing led to another. It started as this, and then ended up being that, and the next thing I know, I'm like doing heroin at like 16 years old. I start, it's like a slow progression. It's hard for people to see. It's hard for some people to see how you get there, but it's like it's a slow progression. At the time when I was growing up, Oxycontins were really big. There's like certain pill out that was really big, and I was doing those, and those got expensive. And then you just from one thing transitions to another, and it's like I ended up being an IV heroin user at 16 years old, and I'm from Pasadena, Maryland, and so Baltimore's not far, and it's an open air drug market. It's different than a lot of places because you don't need to know anybody. It's very open air, public, out in the open drug market. So I started going up there young, and was full blown addicted to doing heroin daily. As a child, basically, and I didn't even, the crazy part, Trey, is at the time I don't even realize that I'm self-medicating. I had compartmentalized that shit that happened to me. So, and by the way, so I do heroin I started doing it at 16. Again, I have parents and a support system, so they're trying to get me help. They're sending me to rehabs, so I'm in and out of rehabs, and even in the rehabs when the counselors are asking me, what's going on, like this is not normal, this teenage behavior, because I'm just like I'm having fun, I think it's fun, I enjoy it, whatever. But no one who's okay inside, puts a needle in themselves, and so I didn't realize it at the time that I was actually doing it to self-medicate, and thankfully it took me going in and out of those rehabs for a few years to learn. And so I used on and off from 16 to 20, and I had like a an incident where I was like um, assaulted pretty badly, and pistol whipped, and like somebody like I had to get reconstructive surgery on my face from University of Maryland. It was like a whole thing, bro. It was like um, really tough, and that even wasn't enough to have me stop. I continued using and continued in the lifestyle, and uh, it was rough for my family and all my loved ones, and it was rough for me. And when I was 17, um, going on to 18, I think I might have been 18, I was in a rehab, and it's the first time I ever spoke about my molestation. And something had called me to go to a counselor and say it. It was like unprompted. Like I went into this counselor's office. I'll cry.
It's all good, brother. It's all good.
Yeah, yeah, I know. They're not like sad tears, They're just like tears, like moving. But yeah, I went in and I told this counselor, you know, what had happened to me when I was younger. And she's like, "You've never told anybody this?" And I'm like, "No." And then so basically, like, it comes out at that point that that had happened to me. And that was interesting because that was the beginning of the peeling of the onion of the healing, but that wasn't the healing. It's like some people would think, as a third party, I might think, okay, well, you've unburdened yourself with that, so now you should be free from those chains of addiction and self-destruction. But I wasn't. I got out of that rehab. I was clean for a little while, and then I relapsed and was right back into using. So because of that, because when I got out, I started using again right away. There was like um, never any real resolution or conclusion to the trauma what had happened to me. Um, and it was just like, uh, yeah. So basically, I get out and I use for a couple more years, and my family is not worried about unburdening my trauma. They're worried about whether I'm going to die or not. Because when you're doing high V heroin, it's like people are dying left and right, and so it never really got looked at again. We just kind of were trying to put fires out and moving one foot in front of the other. Well, long story long, I get into a rehab when I'm 20 years old, and it is supposed to be like a year long rehab. Well, I get in the rehab, and then like maybe a month in, my father finds out he has stage 4 lung cancer. So prior to this, he's not even sick. We know nothing about it. He works every day. He's just a guy, you know. and he's a smoker. He smokes cigarettes, but he finds out he has stage 4 lung cancer while I'm in rehab. Um, he dies 3 months later. He tried the chemo thing, ends up passing away. My rehab let me go be with him while he passed, but um, they weren't being very understanding and generous with my time, and so I ended up leaving that rehab early. Which my mom and my family were worried about, and rightfully so. They thought I might go off the deep end, but for whatever reason, I didn't. That was the time that worked. It was the time that I didn't go back to shooting heroin. So I, I stayed clean for a while, and then I went to NA and AA meetings, and I did all of those things, and I did some religious stuff, and I looked into, it was cool because people walk around thinking that they're okay, and some people don't even know that they're not okay. But when you're doing something as self-destructive as IV heroin use, you can't go around with the facade that everything is okay. So, like, I say I was blessed with that addiction because it made me start looking at myself. And to be honest, I've never stopped looking at myself. One of the steps in NA is to take a fearless and moral inventory of yourself. And it's like I really tried to do that. I really tried to analyze, where I'm at, what I got going on, and try to be brutally honest with me. But basically, yeah, it was a blessing. And then it was like not that wasn't the end of my struggle and journey. It's like that happens when I'm 20. I get clean off the heroin. I stay clean for a while. I'm working a program, and then I start to dabble back into like certain substances I would drink, on certain occasions, but nothing got out of control. And I was going through life. I went and bought a house. I had a good job, a career. I went through, electrician school, and I became, uh, journeyman electrician. I was doing all of the right things on paper, um, and I thought I was okay. And then I did a dose of psilocybin that was very heavy, and I went into my garage and I grabbed a can of spray paint out of my garage, and I walked inside of my house and spray painted on my living room wall, on the inside of my living room wall, the words "I am not okay." And this is like out of character for me. This is not something that I mean I can't describe how out of character that is, and then also how relieved I felt after I had spray painted those words because I didn't know I wasn't okay. I was also at a place where I realized I didn't know that I wasn't okay, and I ended up, you know, uh, overusing and abusing and the psychedelics. Once I found out I could get some healing from them, the drug addict in me took over, and it was like, oh, here's a good reason, to use something in excess, like for a good cause in my brain, because I was getting like these downloads of myself. I was getting like these insights that were very real, but I was doing too much in too short of a time, and my family was concerned about me. So my mom had me, a judge, sign an order to put me into a psych ward, against my own will. And so they did a 3-day hold on me. And thankfully, that happened and like made me take a look at myself and stop. And I had to, and that was the whole thing too. I had to dig way more into the foundation of my trauma because I still hadn't healed from it. It's like I may have spoke on it when I was 17, going on to 18, but ever since then I didn't. And this is, by the way, 10 years later. So this is like I'm 27 or something, 28 when this happened. So I had been living a life of like normalcy and what seems like, everyone, by everyone else's metrics, everything was okay, on the outside. And I thought I was. And for some reason it took psychedelics, psilocybin mushrooms to have me have that insight. And I've been in therapy, basically my whole life, in and out because of the rehabs and stuff. And I go to therapy now continuously, and I try to I do all kinds of different things. I try to read books. I try to journal. I try to be radically transparent. I try to just be a better person, the best kind of person I can be. I want to constantly be evolving. I Yeah. So I mean, basically, uh, yeah, and so also that part of the psychedelic journey after that, I like to call it a psychotic breakthrough, not a psychotic breakdown or break, but it was like after that, I had like straightened up my act and like, but was actually looking at stuff and talking to my family and talking to the therapist about why I wasn't okay and trying to figure that out because I didn't know. And that ended up leading me to go feel called to do ayahuasca in Peru. And so I went and did ayahuasca, the plant medicine. That's like a strong hallucinogenic plant medicine that's been around for many, many, many years in the tribes of the Amazon. And so basically, I went to Peru with some shaman and I did ayahuasca, and I had an insane experience. We did it 3 times over a week, and it was just one of the most profound experiences I've had. It was challenging, it was difficult, and it was worth it. And but yeah, it was tough. And I'm a believer in things like that, and things like the psychedelics and the healing properties in them, and meditation and things like that. Like I think that there's a weird, combination or something. Like I hear people use the two, sometimes synonymously, or like the places that you can get the enlightenment that you can achieve via psychedelics or via breath work and meditation. Like there's like a combination here, and I'm not sure how they play on each other. And I don't claim to know that, that psychedelics are holding some ancestral wisdom. That's a neat theory. I don't know that that's true. I don't know if it's just like, it's because it makes your neuroplasticity a little bit more elastic at the time. I'm not sure. I don't claim to know exactly what's going on. I just know for me, anecdotally, I know for a fact that they've worked and been one of the most divine things in my life and spiritual things in my life. But there's a lot of other things in my life that are divine and spiritual. I just have found that one path to spiritual liberation for me was through the plant medicines, and that's basically the story.
Basically, it's still unfolding, right? Like what keeps what what keeps that addiction at bay, right? Like what is it today that you're doing that keeps that part of yourself in check?
That's a great question. Honestly, I wish it was like a succinct thing that I could just give to people, because that's such a huge thing, right? Because like a lot of the people I was doing that with are in prison or they're dead. It's just there's not many. I'm a part of a small percentage, and I don't. It wasn't like a switch flipped for me. It really wasn't. I wish it was, but I think that what keeps it at bay today is having a life that I'm not wanting to escape from. It's like the drugs are either a way of numbing or a way of feeling. You know, People don't get this about drug use and any type of self-destructive behavior. Well, mainly let's talk about drug use, but drug addiction is like it's not the problem. Drug addiction is the solution to an internal problem, and that solution is problematic in nature. So then it becomes the problem. And then people were focused on this. But the whole time, the reason they were out of control with this is because of this. You know what I mean? So it's like this really interesting thing where the drugs are the would be solution to some other problem, a spiritual problem, an internal problem. It's there's something inside of all of us, and it's like that's the so what keeps it at bay is having a life that I'm not wanting to numb myself from and not wanting to escape from. And yeah, really quickly, there was a really interesting experiment they did with the rats and the cocaine about like these rats would choose cocaine over the regular water. They would choose the cocaine water to the detriment of their life and their friendships and the society and all this. But basically, or no, sorry, they didn't have any friendships. These were just lab mice that were in isolation. And then they used these studies for years and years and years. And then the scientists recreated the experiment. But in this experiment, he made a rat park where there was all these different things to do. There was community, there was wheels, there was this, and then very few mice stayed at the cocaine water because they had community. When they created a community around the mice, and they weren't just like a lab rat in isolation, they had a life worth living, so that thwarted off the need to do the self-destructive behavior and addictively.
For those that don't know, we just had some technical difficulties, so we're just rejoining here. So you made a point in there that was just so fascinating. The drug is the way out of looking at what really is bothering you at that root level, basically allowing you to disassociate with that pain and that trauma. Did you ever look at that trauma from 6 to 7 years old or 8 years old that was created through the molestation?
I did. I actually, it feels intimate, but I don't mind sharing it. This person was someone who um, was still around in my life. Okay, so I would have to see this person who I had that issue with, that trauma with, in my life occasionally, and I had to not, really. I wasn't saying anything, So that person and I never spoke about it. I told my counselor about it. I told my family about it. This person and I never got to speak about it. Um, well, after the mushrooms and the downloads and the psych ward, uh, because part of the thing was about that psychotic breakthrough was that I wasn't okay from that trauma still. And when I was talking to my family about it, my mom and my sister and the people like very close to me, I was extremely honest about some of the feelings that some of the parts of me were having. And some of the parts of me felt vengeful, Some of the parts of me felt angry, obviously, right? And so like they were concerned I would hurt myself or hurt the person who had who had done that. And so that's why they had got me like taken and put away. And when I came out, I'd let everyone know that had no plans on hurting myself or that person. Um, I ended up, this person tried to reach out to me because they heard what was going on with me. It was pretty public around as far as like the people, in my life. And so this person was trying to reach out to me through somebody mutual, and I wasn't really having it at the time. I felt too enraged at the time prior to going away to speak to the person. And then after I went away for the few days, it was 3 days, they can hold you for 72 hours. And so basically when they realized, that it was like a more or less a psychedelic induced issue, and then once I sobered up, it wasn't, I didn't have any issues. So they let me go. And, I ended up, seeing a specific counselor about that specific trauma. And I ended up running into the person who had who was my abuser at the time, and I got to speak to this person, and I got closure. And it's like it's hard to talk about that, man, because people don't want to, people, I don't know. It's a hard thing to look at, okay? And this person who abused me wasn't a grown man. They were like, 13, 14, right? When I was like 6, 7, or 8, right? So it's like they weren't a grown adult abusing a child. Now, I don't say that to lessen it. I don't say that to excuse it. It is, however, a different thing. In my okay, so now listen, it's like this is a tough convo because it gets into a bigger thing, but it's like this kid did he was also a kid, right? 13. They're obviously older and more mature, took advantage. I'm not excusing it. But they're fucked up. They're obviously fucked up, right? This person's fucked up. This is a kid who's confused and fucked up and did something fucked up. Oh, I just cussed so many times. Yeah, sorry, man. Yeah, we can, yeah, this person did something really bad. And so like when I talked to this person, it was basically like, hey, have you done this to anyone? Well, first of all, I was wondering if he was going to deny it, because if he would have denied it, I think my head would have popped off my shoulders. And so he had basically, he knew when I seen him and I said, hey, we have to go speak. We walked outside of the place that we were in and we had a heart to heart in this parking lot, and we were like, I mean, soul to soul, soul to soul, because it could have went who knows one of many ways that could have went. And basically he's crying, I'm crying, there's fire, there's fire in our eyes, there's we can see each other's souls, through we're looking through each other's eyes and seeing into each other's souls. And this person apologizes to me and says that he like thinks about it every day, and he's terribly sorry every day, and he's never done it since, and he's not into kids, and it's not something that he did, and it's just like it. And again, it just felt like closure, you know? I'm not friends with that person. It's not like I want to be around, but it's like there was this closure there where I don't think there's this like evil demonic person walking around hurting other people, right? Because if this person was going on to hurt other people, I would see that there needed to be something to be done somehow to stop that, you know, pain from continuing, that trauma from continuing. But and I don't know any proof, but this person, you know, had said to me that, you know, that they haven't done that. So it's like I got to not only dig into that trauma through therapy, I got to then confront my abuser and have some type of resolution, you know, and we hugged at the end of it and went our separate ways, you know, and it was through tears the whole time. It was like, I mean, you want to talk about heavy, man. It was like you couldn't even put it in a movie. It was so heavy. It was like it's insane.
Well, Justin, man, thank you for sharing all of this because I know that someone listening to this needs to hear it, right? I think one, forgiveness is a tough road to travel because our first instinct is to never forgive anyone for what they have done to us. You know, we want them to rot in hell. We want them to be punished to the extent of the law. However, forgiveness isn't about them; it's about us, right? It's about our healing, um, taking back that part of us that we lost. And I'm curious to the downloads that you received. When you say downloads, when you were in these psychedelic worlds, like what were they giving you?
So it's hard to take them from that realm to this one, and sound, you know, um, like it makes sense. But I mean, a lot of the stuff will seem obvious, you know. It's like, well, the big download that at that time was, "You're not okay, Justin. Hey, Justin, you need to look at something here, okay?" So that was huge for me. Um, and downloads that just like I'm right where I'm supposed to be, you know, that I'm like a part of everything else, that like you know, if I was born with the Jeffrey Dahmer, right? If I was born with his brain and his DNA and his exact experiences, I think I do the exact things he does. Like I don't necessarily like I do believe in free will, but there's a point of like for my empathy and sympathy and forgiveness that everyone is just a part of me, right? Everyone's an extension of me. And so even the worst of the worst, it's like that's who you have to try to extend that to, because those are the tough ones to extend it to. But I try to yeah, downloads like that, downloads that like I'm love, I'm made out of love, you know what I mean? Like this whole thing is about love, like you know, this whole thing is just everything is perfect, or you know, like the fact that like yeah, all kinds of different stuff. You know, I've been through so many different experiences. You know, some of them were yeah, they were all over the place. I've experienced the infinite. You know, the fact that this goes on forever, and I don't even know what that means, but I know it. It's like I know it in my heart and my soul that this goes on forever. I don't know what that means. Like the idea of having no ending is hard for the brain to fathom, but the idea of it having no beginning is even harder. But yeah, I've gotten all kinds of different downloads.
Yeah. I haven't done psychedelics yet, but all the research that people have come back with. The one thing they do say is, to your point about the reintegration of the downloads or the wisdom that's shared with them, like it's so hard to bring back over that veil, whatever that veil is. Like they'll go and they'll learn the secrets to the cosmos, the universe, all the things. Their self will be revealed to them, the secret codes, all that. And then when they bring it back, it's it's like nothing. They don't know how to translate it. They don't have the capacity. I don't know. Maybe it's something in the brain. I don't know, but they can't really translate that. Like people have set up um, frameworks to repeat their experiences, to replicate their experiences. And they'll even have like notepads of paper. And when they're having the experience, they're writing all the wisdom down. And when they get back to where they're at, it's like scribble. So it's just fascinating. Like, why can't we bring this wisdom back here? Right? Like, why can't we bring the cheat codes? Why can't we go buy the magazine that has all the cheat codes for Mario? Right?
Right. I think that there's something to that. I think that it depends on which psychedelic you're using too, because like the more extreme, like the DMTs, are the more dreamlike. And you know how you wake up from a dream and it's hard to really recall that dream, and then 6 hours later it's even harder to recall, and then you kind of lose it. Like that's kind of what happens in some of those like really heavy trips. Um, But yeah, I think that integration is important. Some people say it's like 90% of it. They say 10% is the doing the plant medicine and 90% is integrating. I'm not putting a percentage on it, but I've heard things like that. It's interesting to think about.
Do you think they have their own consciousness? Like to your point earlier about like ayahuasca, spirit, DMT, like does it have its own, like do you come to it with like a surrendering, a humility to allow it to facilitate whatever growth? Because if that's the case, I wonder if like heroin, marijuana, alcohol, like does it have its own like
Mm.
awareness?
Yeah, I'm not sure, and it's a great question, and I think that I don't know. I think that there's yeah, it's a boring answer, but like there's something going on there, whether it's conscious or not. It feels like I don't know. It feels bigger than conscious, right? It feels like there's either it's multi-layered consciousness or it's like it feels that some of it feels very sentient and real and tangible, and I don't know if there's like a consciousness there or a wisdom or that's where we're coming from or that's what we are. Honestly, one of my big freakouts when I've done DMT is why does this exist? How is this possible? How is this possible? Because things happen that you can't even describe. To try to even speak about them, human being to human being, the words fall short, you know? One quote I really like is words are a reducing valve for raw experience, you know? We're limited by the language we have because there's words that there's things that we experience that you cannot explain because you had to experience it, you know? So, um, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going on there, but it seems like how is my brain able to do this? It's just like if this is because some people say that this is just you're poisoning your brain. It's doing this reaction in your brain. It's all it is chemicals. It's like well, the people who are saying that have not broken through on DMT because once you do that, the idea of it being some type of chemical reaction is just goes out the window. And I don't need to be a scientist to know that that just shouldn't be possible. So I don't know what's going on there, Trey. I really don't.
Well, you we have a chat, and you put in the chat that you were kicked out of the DMT realms, and I'm very curious to like why that happened.
Yeah, me too, bro. I wish I knew, man. No one let me know, you know. I got hit with the trespassing charge when I was there. You know what I mean? It wasn't like I got the notice in the mail. I went to Mexico on New Year's and went and met up with some shamans in Mexico and did some plant medicines and ceremony. And one of those was bufo, which is the toad venom, which is DMT. It's a certain type of DMT. They call it the God molecule. And you smoke this vapor, and then you're gone. Your consciousness blasts off, and you're gone. You're no longer even in the room. You're gone. You can hear Mike Tyson talk about it. It changed his life. But here's the thing: most of the times when you hear people talk about it, they talk about experiencing the most blissful oneness that you can possibly imagine, like the universe climaxing and coming to fruition. It's like they say that it's like the most, it's experiencing love for what it is ubiquitously, right? So you can watch videos of people doing it and having just like these like moaning pleasure, like mind-blowingly beautiful experiences. When Justin does it, I do it, and it blasts me off to this hellscape. I'm in an absolute hellscape. I'm not kidding. I hit this, I lay back, and my consciousness it feels like it starts collapsing on itself. And then I get like stuck. And again, my body's not there. It's not even like my body exists, right? I'm not even adjusted. I'm just an experience. And it's hard to describe what's happening because the things you're not seeing things or smelling things or hearing things, you're it's all of the senses at once, or it's a sense that we've never had. It's like everything that I'm experiencing, I am both seeing, smelling, hearing, and feeling in my soul, you know? And it put me in this place that was just agony. It was just pure torture. And I cannot describe what that means because it was only my consciousness there. It felt like I got hit, stuck in their security wall or something. Maybe I went in with too much fear. I don't know. I can tell you that I am 35. I've been kidnapped and pistol whipped and molested, and I watched my dad die. And this experience with DMT that lasted less than 10 minutes was the most traumatic thing I've ever, ever, ever experienced. And it felt like I shouldn't have been there. and it felt like it was hell. I don't know another word to describe it. I'm not a religious person. I don't believe in heaven and hell. I think that we can use those terms, and that's the closest thing I can describe. And I had a distinct feeling that the place I was in that hellscape, was infinite. It was unchanging. It wasn't like hellfire, which would like crackle around. It was this pure pain and agony of every molecule of my being. It was so bad that when I come to and I'm back in this realm and world, I'm screaming at the top of my lungs for 30 minutes straight. The shaman can't calm me down. I'm pacing back and forth, and every time I exhale, I'm screaming like it sounds like the screams of 1,000 people. I'm not kidding. It sounded like generations worth of screams. It felt like I can't describe the pain it was. It was like, and then when I finally stopped screaming, I said, I'm so sad. I said, I'm just so sad. And this guy next to me said, cry. And then I just started weeping. And I've never cried like this, Trey, ever. And sometimes when you do DMT, you'll end up freaking out or crying or something like that. And you don't really know why. This one was so painful because I knew exactly why. I was crying because of where I just was. Where I just was a real place, and it was so agonizing and dark and terrifying that my heart breaks that it even existed, even in that moment. Like if it never even exists for anyone else, I'm not saying that is hell or that's where we go when we die or what. But the answer why that happened to me, I have no idea. But I have been scared to delve into any plant medicine since, and I feel like I got the message loud and clear. The message to me was get out of here. And I don't know if I was just being disrespectful or not reverent enough, or I don't know. I don't know why. I don't think that I could have possibly deserved how brutal that was, no matter what the case was. But I am respecting what happened to me. And yeah, it was dark. So I haven't been back. It feels like I got banned from the DMT scape. Yeah,
Wow. Like, so you
it was
could you feel the
heavy.
agony?
Yes, that's all I could feel.
You could feel agony. Could you see
Yes.
beings or other people there?
No, of something or some things. I couldn't tell you if it was one or multiple, but I had the distinct knowing that there was some other consciousness there. Maybe not consciousness, there was some other presence there, something that I was aware of in my mind, but I couldn't see. And as far as what was in my visual field didn't exist. It's a field of feeling. It's like trying to explain how a triangle tastes. You know what I mean? It's like the words don't, we don't have.
And did you receive, is that the message that you received that you shouldn't be there?
I wish I could have received the message. That was one of my more frustrating experiences with psychedelics because it felt so brutal that it was hard to take anything away from it. I mean, really, like brain melting out of my ears, brutal. And then also I'm like, I'm always wanting to know why. So why did that happen? Why did it happen to me? Why does that exist here on Earth? What is going on? What is going on? If anyone takes a look around, it's just like, what is going on, man? It just made me realize that we know so little about what is going on. That is a portal to somewhere different. And I don't know if that's all around us at all times, if it's multidimensional. I don't know what that is. And I know I sound, loony talking about it, but I'm a pretty pragmatic guy based in, pretty pragmatic stuff, a pretty foundational, logical guy. And yeah, but I didn't get it downloaded. I didn't, yeah.
Well, people that have near death experiences, like a lot of them have, there's the bell curve where a lot of them have the average have like these blissed out experiences. And then you have the outliers that have totally different experiences and they experience hell. So I wonder if it's the same place where you go into this dimension for whatever reason